Coming in at number 10, it's Earth 32. Unexpected. That's probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern. But when he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open. And who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, a cross between a Martian-like Martian Manhunter and a Kryptonian like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave mixed with the Fortress of Solitude and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he showed up. Number 9. Blood League. Now, we have talked about the vampire Batman who appears in the Elseworld Batman Vampire Trilogy, and that version of Batman brings us an incredible story. While that vampire Batman inspired the Batman of Earth 43, their stories are slightly different in some crucial ways. For example, the Batman of Earth 43 intentionally sought out the dark demonic gift in order to face Dracula, instead of being unwillingly given the vampire curse from a good vampire. Batman defeated Dracula, but the curse proved too much for Bruce to handle, and he gave in to the full curse and embraced his new bloodlust. With someone like Batman as a crazed vampire, the other heroes of this Earth didn't last too long before they too were also turned into vampires, which is when, together, they formed the Blood League. I wouldn't call them heroes though. This superpowered group of vampires did enough damage on their own world that they decided to leave it and attack the planet Rann, and they were later coerced into invading the universe of Earth 13. Eventually, Batman and the Blood League even played a part in the death metal event.
Number 8. Witch Hunter Gwen. This one comes to us from an alternate cover, but I wanted to include it here because I love the design and I love the idea of Gwen in such a different role as this. This alternate version of Gwen appeared solely on the 2015 cover for 1602 Witch Hunter Angela issue number 1. At least, I believe we've only seen her here. This isn't the only time Gwen would appear as an alternate on a cover though either. During the summer of 2015, we were all suffering from Gwen fever, and as such she appeared on 20 different alternate covers, with all of them featuring different versions of Gwen. And since then, she's also had her own Gwenverse sort of come about, so there's a lot of Spider-Gwen out there running around, a lot of variants. Number 7. Ghost Spider. Not really a full-on alternate of Gwen, but another character that uses this same name, Ghost Spider. And I like Ghost Spider, so I thought I would include him. Ghost Spider is actually an alternate Peter Parker from Earth 11638. He is the version of Spider-Man who never lost his uncle. Instead, Uncle Ben helped Peter with his training, but also kinda turned him into a monster. Peter in this world was extremely successful, a wealthy celebrity scientist and philanthropist who also fought crime as the vigilante Amazing Spider. However, he started to use his technology to trap other spider variants from other worlds so he could drain them of their powers, taking all that power for himself. Having never learned the lesson, with great power comes great responsibility, but instead, with great power comes a great responsibility to stay powerful, from his uncle. However, when 616 Spider-Man was about to be drained, this alternate version had actually a change of heart and ended up sacrificing himself to free the main reality Peter, seemingly perishing but really becoming something new, becoming one with his regrets and the souls of the underworld. He was revived as Ghost Spider. No hyphen. And he's basically kind of like Ghost Rider meets Spider-Man, but he also uses the name Ghost Spider, so I just thought he would be an interesting one to include since he uses the same name that Spider-Gwen uses now currently in the comics. Number 6. Secret Wars. This version of Spider-Gwen is from the 2015 A-Force series. She was an alternate from the reality of Earth 16191, one of the protectors of Doom's battle world realm known as Arcadia, one of the patchwork domains from God Emperor Doom's kingdom that appeared during the 2015 Secret Wars event. In this reality, Spider-Gwen saved MJ from a Marvel Zombies horde, and it's kind of implied that the two may have some kind of romantic relationship in this universe. Or I don't know, they just seemed kind of flirty to me, so I could be wrong there, but picking up on some flirting. My flirting meter went off. Number 5. Venom, not the official name of this character, but a name that I gave them. While on Earth 65, Spider-Gwen actually does become Venom for a time, there is actually a version of her who stays as Venom and also becomes a detective. And actually the version, the name that we know Gwen as is kind of Gwenom, or like that's the editorial name, or Venom, but this version is Venom all the time, so I just thought, why not just call her Gwenom? But she doesn't go by that name, just so you know. This is pretty cool though, right? This Gwen variant is from the alternate reality of Earth 617, where her origin story was actually the same as the 616 Gwen Stacy counterpart, up until she had a run-in with her own alternate from Earth 65, which caused the timeline to split, hence why her reality is known as 617. Get it? It's 616, but like one change. After the death of her father, George Stacy, which Gwen initially blamed Spider-Man for, Gwen ran into Spider-Gwen of Earth 65. Following their run-in with one another, where each was able to kind of provide some insight that helped the other, Gwen of Earth 617 was inspired to become a detective. Later, she would bond with the Venom symbiote of her Earth, becoming the hero known as Spider-Woman. But I like to call her Gwenom, just because if I called everyone Spider-Woman on this list, it'd be confusing. Speaking of, number 4, Spider-Woman. Seriously, one of the cutest realities around. On this Earth, Spider-Gwen is married to Miles Morales, and the two of them actually have kids together, one daughter and one son. Their children also inherited superpowers and fought for justice alongside their mom and dad as members of the Amazing Eight. The Amazing Eight is Earth 8's premier superhero team, which is made up of actual spider heroes from across the multiverse. This Gwen is not just a member of the Amazing Eight team, but also belongs to the Council of Spider-Women, which is made up of, well, you guessed it, alternate versions of Spider-Woman from across the Marvel multiverse, or Spider-Verse if you prefer. Number 3, Ghost Spider, with the hyphen. Ghost Spider is technically the main version of this character, but the weird thing is that although she may be more popular than the original Gwen Stacy from Marvel Comics at this point, who has been long gone, Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider as she is now known, actually started off herself as a variant. However, she has become so popular among fans that she's kind of become more known now as the main version of that character, which is kind of wild to think about. So even though it feels weird to have her on this list, as you know, she is the main person to inspire the variants that are on the list, she's the main person that inspired this list, it feels weird to not have her on here since she herself was inspired by the original Gwen Stacy of Earth 616. So really, she's a variant. Ghost Spider has been known by many names, initially being known as Spider-Woman before becoming Venom in her reality, and later becoming more well known as Spider-Gwen until recently in 2019, when she took the codename of Ghost Spider for herself. Number 2, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is technically also a main version of Gwen, if not, you know, the main version of Gwen, since she herself was the original. She hails from Earth 616, known as the main Marvel continuity in the comics. Here, Gwen's story was cut short when she was tragically killed during a fight between Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Being tossed from either George Washington or Brooklyn Bridge, depending on the version that you're reading of this story, Gwen plummeted towards the ground. Without enough time to catch her himself, Spider-Man shot a web towards her. This succeeded in securing Gwen, saving her from the fall, but tragically is believed to have caused Gwen's neck to snap, instantly killing her. Still, while Gwen is no longer among the living in the Earth 616 universe, her presence is constantly felt, with her friends and loved ones constantly remembering her and keeping her memory alive. Most recently, Spider-Man saw the progenitor adopt the image of Gwen during the AXE Judgment Day event, while acting as his judge, which shows you just how important Gwen still is to Peter even today, despite her being gone for so long from his life. Number 1, Gwenpool. Gwenpool is one of my favorite Gwen alternates. She is actually an alternate version of two different characters, a mashup of Gwen Stacy and Deadpool, hence Gwenpool. Gwenpool originates from a world where superheroes exist only in fiction, which has led many to believe that she exists in our universe, Earth 1218, the real world. However, Gwen doesn't actually have an official designated number for her Earth yet, so it's still kind of up for debate. Regardless, Gwen preferred to live in a fantasy world and eventually did end up in a fantasy world, coming to Earth 616. Finally existing in a world where superheroes were real, Gwen set out to become one herself, going out and getting a costume and ending up unintentionally with the hero name of Gwenpool. Number 10, Animated Spider-Verse. I love this version of Gwen, although really she is pretty similar to her comic book counterpart, but maybe that's why I love her so much. One thing she does have that her comic book counterpart does not is an audible voice. In both Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, Gwen is voiced by Haley Steinfeld, who does an amazing job. I love how much we've gotten to explore her story, and I am hoping we get to spend a bit more time in her Earth the animated Earth 65 going forward in the franchise. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love alternate versions, we do have an alternate versions playlist, so you can click it, check it out. Number 9. Ghost Spider-Man. While only making a brief appearance in the comics, I have to mention this one. You know me, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, so any opportunity to talk about her, I am here for it, and I'm here for this one too. Unfortunately for me, she actually is an alternate that is both a combination of her and Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider-Man is one of the alternate heroic versions of May that appears in Spider-Verse issue number 2, when she summons the power of her alternates to defeat the Carnage variant. The costume Ghost Spider-Man wears is near identical to Gwen's. And for those who don't know, Ghost Spider is also the codename for Gwen. Like I said, she has had many codenames.
Number 8. Deceased. While Bruce Wayne did play a part in DC's answer to Marvel Zombies, Deceased, it was his successor that was arguably much more important. When the anti-life equation techno-organic virus infected a huge number of the Earth, Bruce got infected when he had to fight off the infected Nightwing and Tim Drake Robin. Using Mr. Freeze's cryosuit, he was able to slow down the virus long enough to study it and give information and say goodbye to the remaining Justice League and his son, Damian Wayne, who would go on to take his father's mantle at the age of just 13 years old. The fight against the anti-living eventually reached cosmic scales. The heroes eventually found themselves facing Erebos, the one who was responsible for the entire anti-living outbreak. Now, Deceased is a long comic book run, so I can't give you all the details in this short little time, but Damian essentially grows up over the run of the comic, stepping fully into his role as Batman and creating a relationship with the new Wonder Woman, Cassie. Alfred Pennyworth eventually becomes the new Spectre and bringing a cure for the anti-living, but right near the end, Damian organizes the final attack on Erebos in Limbo. Now, in an all-white batsuit that looks amazing, Damian put the life equation, the opposite to the anti-life equation, inside of himself, and he decided to detonate it inside of Erebos to destroy him and the anti-living from the inside out. He makes the ultimate sacrifice, and it's pretty awesome. Number 7. B-Rex. Some of the coolest stuff has come from the dark multiverse, and of all the alternate characters to come out of it, a Bruce Wayne who transferred his consciousness into the mechanical T-Rex in his Batcave has to be one of the most awesome. Now, as a Batman T-Rex, Batmanosaurus Rex, or just B-Rex if you prefer, Batman decided that he has been wasting time, not just completely wiping out his villains, and so he goes on a dinosaur rampage through Arkham Asylum, chomping and crushing inmates and staff alike. B-Rex gets recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, just like a bunch of other Dark Knights, and he was involved in the invasion of the regular multiverse and was even important to the revival of the Batman Who Laughs into the Darkest Night. Unfortunately, during the final battle, B-Rex and Batmage face off against Solomon Grundy, who had the strength to stop them both. Number 6. The Final Knight. The Final Knight is actually Duke Thomas, who was a sidekick to the Batman that the demon Barbados used as a gateway into the multiverse and who was ultimately transformed into Barbados the Dragon of the End. Now this Batman, alongside the rest of his league, who were also transformed into dragons, brought the collapse of their world, and Duke fled into the multiverse to survive. Duke eventually returns to face these dragons, only to be saved by that universe's Nightwing, who brings Duke to the surviving members of the Justice League, who band together and give almost all of their lives to fight the dragons, with Duke being the one to bring down his old mentor. After slaying the Dragon of the End, Duke turned his hide into crazy awesome armor and wielded Nightwing's massive battle axe. Now calling himself the Final Knight, he escapes his crumbling reality and sets out into the dark multiverse to become one of its only real heroes. Number 5. The Batman Who Frags. Yes, we are sticking with the dark multiverse still, and I will for the next point too, but I promise that is not a negative, and I can prove that to you by telling you that this version of Batman is a mix with Lobo. In an attempt to gain their powers, this Batman injected himself with Zarnian DNA, Zarnians being the race that Lobo is the sole survivor of. This did totally give Batman the insane super strength and healing factor that we often attribute to Lobo, but it had the maybe expected downside of completely changing Bruce's personality as well. He became much more aggressive, stabby, and volatile, and he also picked up one hell of a potty mouth. Batman also gained a much more similar look to Lobo as well, and I would be a liar if I said that this guy didn't look absolutely amazing. He's so cool. Unfortunately though, he isn't as cool as the real Lobo, and couldn't quite cut it when he was sent to capture the guy, instead finding himself trapped in a universe called Loboland, where he was forced to face a Lobo Justice League. Yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Number 4, Dark Father. Okay, last dark multiverse Batman on this list, I promise. But also arguably one of the most alarming. That's because this version of Batman brought about the end of Darkseid, and in doing so, gained the evil god's abilities and even took on his appearance. He mastered the anti-life equation and controlled a massive army of para-Robins instead of the usual para-demons. He gave up the anti-life equation to his Superman, but he still went on to work with the Batman Who Laughs and invaded Earth Zero. Dark Father defeated the Teen Titans, the Titans, and Superman, which resulted in the destruction of the moon. He then built a new Apokolips inside of the core of the burnt out sun, and he kept Superman and many others imprisoned there until Batman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn were able to come to the rescue, freeing Superman, who punched Dark Father into space. There he goes, look at him. Number 3, Red Sun. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say that he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batman on this list, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down the Man of Steel. So, he stole Wonder Woman, bound her with her own lasso, and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever, but alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her own lasso and remove the generator powering the lamps. Unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized like everyone else who opposed Superman, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he implanted in his own small intestine. But before he passed, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 2, Flashpoint Batman. With the loss of his son at the hands of a mugger, in the alternate Flashpoint timeline, Thomas Wayne was driven to send criminals to the afterlife as the ruthless vigilante Batman. His first victim would be Joe Chill, the very mugger who ended the life of his son. Now, originally planning to poison Joe, Thomas went the much more reasonable route of pummeling with his bare hands. This act drove his wife, Martha Wayne, into insanity, cutting a grin into her own face and becoming this timeline's version of the Joker. Thomas has a more important mission to him than his war on crime though, restoring his son's life. He meets the Flash, helps restore his powers, learns of the alternate timeline where Bruce actually lived, and assembles an alternate timeline Justice League, and together they restore the original timeline. Thomas eventually enters into the current DC timeline, and wishing for his son to stop being Batman, he teams up with Bane to completely break Bruce, but it fails. Since his introduction in Flashpoint Volume 2 Number 1 in July of 2011, Flashpoint Batman, Thomas Wayne, has been a complex, interesting, and infamously fan-loved character. And finally, in at number 1, Owlman. The crime syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth 3, and is a twisted, evil version of the main universe Justice League of America. The Batman of this villainous league isn't a Batman at all. In fact, he isn't even Bruce Wayne. No, he is Thomas Wayne Jr., also known as Owlman. Thomas Wayne Jr. was the eldest son of the Waynes, yes, the older brother of Bruce in this world. He believed that his parents were managing their wealth poorly, and for that reason alone, Thomas decided that they needed to go. He tried to convince his younger brother Bruce to help him in this endeavor, but when the time came to do the deed, Bruce was pretty hesitant and attempted to dissuade Thomas. Perceiving this as a sign of weakness, Thomas took Bruce to the afterlife, while his butler and servant, Alfred, who would become known as the Outsider, ended the lives of their parents. Becoming the villain Owlman, Thomas asserted power, dominance, and control over the city of Gotham, forcing it to be under his control. There is a lot more to this Owlman, but what we need to know is that he, alongside the Crime Syndicate of America, could not save their world from the Monitor, and so they fled it, invading the main DC universe and bringing us the Forever Evil story, which is probably one of the most awesome stories to come out of the New 52.
Number 10. Young Justice. Earth 16 is the designated number given to the reality we see in Young Justice. Despite being an animated series, Young Justice is actually considered to be separate from the main DCAU reality, and is instead its own separate Earth. Here, Hal Jordan is Green Lantern. We first met Jordan in 2010 when the series started, but he continues to appear in the series up until its final season in 2021. This version of Hal here is one of the founding members of the Justice League. Like in the comics, he is also based in Coast City. One of the fun facts that I just find entertaining from this universe is that Hal Jordan is revealed as not liking Guy Gardner. Both he and Jon Stewart in this reality were very much against having Guy join the Justice League when they were considering adding new members to the roster. Also, I gotta say, I haven't watched Young Justice yet, and it keeps getting recommended to me, so I feel like I really need to watch it. If you have a favorite moment or episode, let me know, because I want to go back and watch all of it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not tell us that you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it really helps us out if you do that, so if you want to, then I would like that. Number 9. Earth 5. Hal Jordan of Earth 5 hails from an interesting reality. Here, Hal Jordan is still the hero known as Green Lantern, but what else do we know about him? Not much in terms of his origins, but what we do know is that in this reality, Hal doesn't swear or use profanity, because that's just not a thing that folks do on Earth 5, gosh darn it. He ended up being pitted against 2 other Green Lanterns when he was summoned by the future evil version of Captain Atom, who is known as Monarch. Number 8. Sinister vs. Xavier. In this reality, Mr. Sinister also formed his own team of X-Men. However, Beast, being Beast even in this reality, he remained a member of Charles Xavier's aka Professor X's team. When X's team came head to head with Sinister's X-Men team over the fate of Young Mutant Storm, Xavier's X-Men seemingly won this fight. As a result, they would recruit Cyclops and Havoc from Sinister's team, who they truly believed wanted to join them. However, it turns out that Cyclops and Havoc actually have their own reasons for joining up with Xavier's team, and they perhaps are maybe not done serving Sinister just quite yet. Number 7. Creature. In Morgan Le Fay's warped reality, Hank McCoy ended up being transformed into a medieval hero known as Creature. In this world, all of the Avengers were basically imprisoned, having been warped to believe they were meant to be alive in this medieval time, despite the year also still being 1998 here. They didn't think that was weird at all, and they believed they were all members of Queen Morgan's elite group of protectors known as the Queen's Vengeance. Although I gotta be real, Creature looks like less of a hero here and more of a court jester to me. That hat. Fortunately, Scarlet Witch was able to use her power to see things more clearly and realize that the world had been altered, which is why Morgan initially tries to keep her imprisoned, but hey, that doesn't work. Scarlet Witch was able to use her power combined with her friend's power to return the world to normal. Also, big thanks to Wonder Man there, who Wanda basically gives power to and then everything gets set back. Number 6. Earth 12. Have you ever wondered what Beast would be like if he were a celebrity? Well, wonder no more, because this is exactly what we get to see when we venture into a version of Mimic's home reality, Earth 12. This version of Mimic, aka Calvin Rankin, hails from a world where mutants are not feared by humans, but instead are more well regarded, being treated more like famous celebrities, who humans actively want to be like. All of the heroes of that world are more celebrated than like, you know, regular people being like, you guys, you're sometimes good but sometimes bad, having their own fans and various brands who actively want to represent them. This version of Mimic would go on to be selected as the leader of the Exiles team in issue number 1, but we'd also see a glimpse into his home reality, and among those other mutants present, would get to see Hank McCoy's Beast thriving here as well. We don't really know how it happened, but we do know that even in this reality, Hank goes from being a humanoid looking beast with oversized feet and hands to the bouncing blue beast from modern comics we've come to know and love. We can assume probably that it happened in a similar way. We also don't know like really what Beast's life is like here, but I know that Calvin and Angel in this reality like both co-founded a charity, so I'm assuming Calvin did something cool with Beast too. I don't know, maybe Beast was the one that helped him write a book. Number 5. MC2. I love the MC2 reality of Earth 982. This is the home reality reality for Spider-Girl, aka Mayday Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker's Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson. You see, in this reality, heroes were actually allowed to settle down, start families, and even, get this, retire. Alas, Beast was not quite as lucky as some others from this reality though. He ends up in a fight against Juggernaut and is really only seen in a few issues from this line of comics. I would have to assume that at some point he does retire since many younger heroes take over for those who have come before here, but we really don't see him that much, so I cannot confirm or deny this theory based on anything from the comics that I've seen. Sad, because I would actually be interested in seeing what Beast would get up to if he were allowed to settle down, have kids of his own, or retire and maybe focus on more purely scientific pursuits. I could see that too. Professor Beast, let's go. Number 4, Beast. Now with more Beast. This version of Beast hails from Earth 763. Here, Beast ended up becoming even more Beast-like than his Earth 616 version when his mutation was amplified and then unable to be reversed. Here, while Henry appeared even more Beast-like physically, he also became mentally more like a Beast himself, losing much of his smarts with the mutation also manifesting in his mind. With these changes to his life, he ended up with Wonder Man in this reality. When Wonder Man was killed in a fight against MODOK, Beast enters a rage, going completely berserk and decimating MODOK in response. MODOK would explode, seemingly killing Beast as well. However, it only seemed like Beast was killed in this reality because instead it was right before the instant of that fatal explosion that he was drafted to join the Exiles, as so happens with some Exiles members. Number 3, Dr. Henry McCoy. Honestly, I'm mainly picking this alternate version of Beast because I love his design and how he's drawn here. He makes his first and only appearance in Astonishing X-Men Ghost Boxes issue number 1. Here, the Doctor is a member of Emma Frost's X Society. This reality seems to take place in more of a turn-of-the-century style period, with calls even showing up on old-timey looking monitors that to me kind of resemble more of like a classic old-school radio. You know, the one with all the buttons and all the dials and stuff. They're also referred to as audio-visual calls as opposed to just a FaceTime or a video call. So it's kind of like turn of the century, but we got some modern technology, but it's still old, you know what I mean? Very interesting stuff. The Doctor is just as much of a genius as we're used to him being, and seems to mainly be on Emma's team because of his brilliant intellect, which honestly, fair enough. Number 2, Elderly Beast. This version of Beast comes to us from the collection of short stories and alternate worlds that are showcased in X-Men Millennial Visions from the year 2000. Here we get a glimpse into a future reality of Earth 1012. As the mutant population continues to boom, the X-Men are forced to take on new students. As they continue to get older, they do their best to keep up with the new generation of young mutants, but instead struggle to maintain a sense of authority over their rambunctious students. In Beast's case, he ends up having his denture stolen as part of a prank that's played on him by the younger students. Poor Beast, his dentures. Number 1, Dark Beast. Probably one of the most iconic alternates that Beast has ever had. At one point, I thought the Beast we currently had in modern day comics might actually be this version of Beast based off of his cruel and often unforgiving behavior as of late, but nah, I'm pretty sure the modern day Beast just, I guess, became a paranoid, power-hungry dude all on his own. Dark Beast was confirmed to be his own separate thing, and as far as I know is still decapitated, though no longer dead. He was decapitated and dead, and now he's just capitated. He's just a floating head. His head was preserved instead by Mr. Sinister and apparently kept alive. So he's alive, but he's just a head now. This version of Beast hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295, where he was once one of Apocalypse's geneticists, and in this world Apocalypse ends up taking over the world. Ooh. Without Xavier's guidance, Beast became a mad scientist who was willing to follow through with even the most immoral and dangerous experiments, with many mutants becoming his test subjects against their will. Pretty scary stuff.
Coming in at number 10 is Iron Man the Traitor. In one of the first ever What If comics, we get an answer to the question of what if Iron Man was a traitor? It picks up following his usual origin story with Iron Man being famously captured and forced to make the tools of his trade. Like normal, he still creates the Iron Man armor, but the change comes when instead of booting up and busting his way out, the boot up sequence takes just a bit too too long, and Yinsen's sacrifice goes to waste as it doesn't buy Tony enough time like it normally would. Tony is found and restrained before he can do anything. Now that he has been found and this new weapon, the Iron Man armor, is discovered, the leader of the organization that had captured Tony, Chen Lu, plants a device in Tony's arc reactor that keeps Tony alive, but that allows Chen to shut it off remotely if Tony doesn't do what they say. Crucially though, Chen also implants a communication device in Tony's skull so that Chen Lu can spy on and control Tony. Then he lets him get discovered. Thanks to the fact that he can now control Tony, he forces him to become a hero like he would have anyways, gain the trust of the superhero community, and then learn secrets pertaining to S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony is ordered to dispatch Reed Richards and goes to complete this mission, but it's revealed that Tony has actually been recording an SOS tape by speaking incredibly slowly, and he sent that tape to Reed, who figured out he had to play it at a faster speed, and he learned of the situation that Iron Man was in. Once their fight began, Iron Man eventually got, quote, incapacitated by Reed, who in actuality helped remove the device inside of Tony's heart, giving Tony the chance to get his revenge. For a short and somewhat silly what-if story, it's actually pretty good. Number 9. Lord Iron. Earth 311 is the home to the incredibly cool story of Marvel 1602. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and adapts them to the Elizabethan era, and yes, that includes an Elizabethan Iron Man. Anthony Stark, aka Lord Iron, has an armor powered by literal lightning in a bottle. No, I ain't joking. His armor was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars and treated rather harshly by Robert David Banner, aka the Hulk of 1602. This resulted in Anthony requiring the suit to survive. But that's all backstory. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner at the Roanoke colony in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit, in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, is not the most advanced and powerful suit, obviously, but it is centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with the first ever Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Elizabethan Iron Man literally captured lightning in a bottle, and that says all it has to, really.
And it ate Zombie Cap. Colonel America's life before the onslaught of the zombie plague of Earth 2149 remains largely undisclosed, but it is reasonable to assume that it paralleled the experience of Captain America from 616. Aside from the evident difference in rank, the only other deviation from 616 is that Colonel America assumed the role of President of the United States, akin to his ultimate counterpart. Although his presidency was cut short before completing a full term, tragically he succumbed to the zombie infection and became part of the Zombie Galacti, only to meet a gruesome fate when his brains were violently extracted by Red Skull. Here's a fun fact: such a high percentage of US presidents have been assassinated that it is considered the deadliest job in the world. Yep, Cap isn't changing that. However, his story took an unexpected turn as he found himself transplanted into the body of T'Challa, the son of Black Panther. The circumstances surrounding this transformation and the ensuing consequences for Colonel America in his new form are yet to be fully revealed, but yeah, that's a whole load of crazy. Gotta love zombies. And it's 7 Soldiers Supreme. After acquiring the Infinity Stones, Gamora harnessed their power to trap the souls of the universe within the Soul Gem. To further subdue the inhabitants, she folded the universe in half, causing every soul to merge with another and giving rise to the Warp World, a pocket dimension where history was rewritten and adapted to accommodate the fused beings. Basically, like the Marvel vs. DC, but just with Marvel characters. Within Warp World, Doctor Strange and Captain America were combined, forming the enigmatic Soldier Supreme. In this altered reality, during the height of World War II, the meek Stephen Rogers volunteered for an experimental procedure to become a super soldier in the US Army, but unbeknownst to him, the scientist Morgan Erskine, who presented herself as the creator of the super soldier serum, actually employed a mystical ritual that granted Stephen enhanced physical abilities and access to potent sorcery. Following Erskine's ultimate demise at the hands of spies from the opposition, because you can't say that word, can't say the NA word, her true nature was discovered. Although disheartened by her methods, the military saw promise in Stephen's transformation and he assumed the mantle of Soldier Supreme. And at 6, Roberta Mendez. Roberta Mendez on Earth 2329-1 was the wife of Alchemax Operative 1940 and was forcibly exposed to the super soldier serum, transforming her into Captain America. Unaware of her dual identity, Roberta led Alchemax's Avengers. During an attack at her home by the Specialist, Roberta transformed into Captain America and defeated him, but couldn't prevent his self-death. The following day, Alchemax CEO Miguel Stone assigned the team to investigate Martin Hargood, suspected of hiring Specialist. They tracked Hargood to Latvian cuisine, where he argued with John Eisenhart, who revealed himself as the Hulk and attacked the team when they refused to leave. The confrontation spilled outside where they encountered the Hulk's allies, the Defenders, but yeah, this whole world is crazy. But yeah, there you go. That's Captain America for you. Roberto Mendez. Earth 20, just a lot of numbers. Halfway through into number 5, Captain Carter. I feel like you're all gonna know this one. Captain Margaret Elizabeth Peggy Carter was a distinguished Avenger and founding member of the Illuminati, the Marvel Illuminati, YouTube, relax. Playing a crucial role in the Infinity War of 2018, she fought valiantly against Thanos and aided in his defeat during the Battle of Titan. In the aftermath, when Doctor Strange utilized the Darkhold for dreamwalking, resulting in a threat of multiversal incursion, Carter, along with the Illuminati, voted in favor of executing him to safeguard the universe. In the years that followed, Carter found herself presiding over a hearing concerning an alternate version of Doctor Strange, who was apprehended by Baron Mordo on suspicions of posing a similar danger to the reality. Before the vote could be finalized and condemn this alternate Strange to death, their headquarters was attacked by the Scarlet Witch, who ended up killing Carter with her own shield and, you know, pulled a science class and kind of just severed her torso from her legs. Yeah, very confusing considering how I'm pretty sure Cap has actually caught that multiple times, but I guess it wasn't being thrown by magic, so yeah. And at 4, Commander A. In an alternate future of Earth 1183-1, Commander A, a genetically enhanced version of Captain America named Kyoshi Morales, was called upon by the Contemplator alongside 4 other Captain Americas from different time periods. They were summoned because someone was erasing Captain Americas across the multiverse, a dangerous act that would unleash an entropic wave leading to the destruction of all realities. Commander A and his fellow Captain Americas were transported to the 21st century America, the time and place where the erasures were occurring, and together they confronted and fought against forces behind the erasing of Americas, facing off against the character known as Americommand, which is just lazy naming. Come on, Americommand? Dude, that's just the government. Getting close to the end into number 3, the Captain. Captain? Leaving a pineapple on his doorstep for Ted Mosby, oh wait, sorry, wrong Captain, my bad. In the midst of the Battleworld conflict, Stephen engaged in a brutal confrontation with the Wolverine clan, ultimately emerging victorious. Arcade, however, taunted Stephen, provoking his wrath. In a swift act of retaliation, Stephen trapped Arcade within the formidable jaws of the Devil Dinosaur. However, his actions attracted the attention of God Emperor Doom and Sheriff Strange, who summoned him for judgment. If you can't tell, this world is kinda nuts. Stephen pleaded on behalf of Steve, revealing that in order to secure Bucky's freedom, Steve had been tasked with venturing into the Greenland domain and assassinating the Red King. Sent on this mission, Steve encountered ferocious monsters, but was saved from their onslaught by Hulk. It's a mess, okay? Basically, I'm pretty sure this one is just, I forget what age it was. I feel like it's a dinosaur one, okay? I think it is. Just read it if you really want to know, because I can't explain it. It's so confusing. Penultimately, in at number 2, Vamp Cap. Stephen Rogers of Earth 3931 was a member of the Avengers, but became a vampire during World War II after being infected by Baron Blood. This transformation granted him new powers, and he used this newfound ability to turn his fellow heroes into enslaved minions. Gotta love America. The Exiles, a team tasked with fixing alternate realities, encountered Rogers and faced a vampirized Sunfire who had been influenced by him. One by one, the Exiles team members were killed, and Rogers himself was decapitated by Mimic using Wolverine's claws. Despite this seemingly fatal blow, Rogers miraculously survived by reattaching his head to his body. Eventually, Sunfire was cured of her vampirism and retaliated, annihilating Rogers and the remnants of his team. But yeah, Vampire Captain. Oh my god. And finally, in at number 1, Captain Americat. Not even joking. Captain America has a remarkable ability to adapt to different realities within the multiverse, even in the more eccentric corners of it. Here we go. Take for instance the Earth of Spider-Ham, where Steve Rogers is a feline counterpart known as Steve Mouser or Captain Americat. While his escapades may possess a more lighthearted and whimsical tone compared to other versions of Cap because it's a freaking Earth of animals, in this alternate universe, he fearlessly protects his world with feline grace and is still a Captain America but as a cat. But he he does have catnip craving villains, which is just the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever talked about. I've talked about a turtle who has a connection to the Speed Force, but Captain America as a goddamn cat? Man, no, okay? Cats are Red Skull. It's as simple as that. Cats are always trying to kill you, so I don't know why they made him a cat, but I guess it was for the pun. Captain America dog doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. And at 10, Ian Rogers. When Steve Rogers got trapped in Dimension Z, he rescued a baby boy while he was trapped there. Since time moves faster in Dimension Z, he ended up raising that boy for over 10 years. Sharon Carter ended up raising him for the remainder of his childhood when she got trapped in Dimension Z after going there to rescue Steve, but the boy was the son of Armin Zola, but saw Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter as his parents. His birth name was Leopold Zola, but he goes by Ian Rogers, the true name that his father gave him. By the time he left Dimension Z, he was a full-grown adult. Then he took on the name Nomad and partnered with Sam Rogers, but he does at one point become Captain America as well, I think. And even if he doesn't, he's basically gay. He's like Cap's adoptive son, so you know what? It's like Patriot adjacent. And at 9, Super Soldier. Super Soldier is fairly evidently, well, I say evidently, but I guess you wouldn't really know that. It's actually a combination of Clark Kent and Steve Rogers. First being introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3 from 1996, during World War II, government scientists were working on a super soldier formula that would transform a man into much more, into some sort of human weapon using cellular samples of an alien corpse. Clark Kent volunteers for the super soldier program and they administer the formula, as well as a good chunk of solar radiation. This mixture gave Clark Kent incredible abilities, including all those of Captain America and Superman. Super strength, heat vision, flight. Now known as Super Soldier, Kent wields the Superman logo as his shield. In March of 1942, Super Soldier fought Ultra Metallo, a robot sent by Lex Luthor to aid Germany in winning the war by killing Clark, but the fight started in Washington, D.C. and ended above the northern Atlantic Ocean, when Clark sacrificed himself to take down the robot, sinking them both into the icy depths. Jimmy Olsen was one of the few witnesses of this event, and instead reported that Super Soldier had retired after America had declared that the war was won. 50 years later, the body was thought out in JLA number 4, that stands for Judgment League Avengers, and Clark joined the Judgment League Avengers as its leader.
Number 8, Justice League of Assassins. Of course, with the Justice League of Assassins, they were pretty short-lived, appearing in only a single issue where, well, they kinda died, despite being, I would assume, amazing assassins. However, that being said, I think these are characters who ultimately look really cool when it comes to their design, which is why I'm including them here. And I'm sure, you know, before this moment, although we don't get to see much of them, they were all pretty bad. Included among their ranks was their own Green Lantern, who appears to be somewhat cybernetic in terms of his abilities and his look, instead of having just a straight up Green Lantern power ring. Now this might explain why they didn't make it out alive past their first appearance in the Rebirth Superman issue number 15 from 2017. The Justice League of Assassins hail from Earth number 14. Hopefully we get to see more of Earth number 14 at some point. Number 7, Earth 33. Another version of Green Lantern that I find interesting, along with the world and team he hails from, is a Green Lantern of Earth 33. We don't know his name, but we know his powers are innately magic. He has only made one appearance in Countdown to Adventure issue number 3, but he comes from a really cool team from his Earth known as the League of Shamans. On Earth 33, their version of the Justice League are basically all magic users. The Green Lantern, while magic, still has a Green Lantern ring, and is supposedly also part of a version of the core from this reality. Whether the ring is also magic based remains to be completely confirmed here, but it does seem to be implied, at least to me, that Green Lanterns in this world were also based in the world of cosmic magic. At least, that's what it seems to me. Number 6, Abin Sur. On Earth 20, Abin Sur is actually the protector of Earth as Green Lantern. However, tragically, because he resembles a devil here, he actually protects Earth from a distance because he doesn't want to scare the planet's inhabitants. I think that's both sweet and also kinda sad. As such, he protects Earth from the shadows, a hero who is largely unknown to the planet's populace. Not only is he a member of the Green Lantern Corps in this reality, but he is also a member of the Society of Superheroes, who were brought together by this universe's Dr. Fate, who goes simply by Doc Fate. Abin Sur as Green Lantern is also one of the heroes who joins up with the multiversal superhero team known as Justice Incarnate. Number 5. Star Sapphire. Despite still being known as Star Sapphire on Earth 11, Carol Jordan, an alternate of both Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris, is actually the equivalent to Hal Jordan's Green Lantern of the Prime Earth. Earth 11 is a world in which the premier superhero team of Earth, known as the Justice Guild, is basically gender bent, being made up of mostly female superheroes who are versions of their Prime Earth male counterparts. Wonder Woman, of course, in this reality though, is a man, because that would of course be the gender bend for Wonder Woman, Wonder Man. Despite being the alternate version of this Earth's Green Lantern, however, Carol still remains here a Star Sapphire, but is cemented solely as a hero. So not necessarily Star Sapphire in the sense that sometimes she's kinda evil. Number 4. Tangent Comics. I love the whole look of this character, to be honest. She seems super cool and super mysterious. This version of Green Lantern hails from Tangent Comics, as per the name of this point, obviously. She made her first appearance in Tangent Comics Green Lantern issue number 1 in the 90s. Now, if you aren't familiar, Tangent Comics was actually a DC imprint that existed from 1997 to 1998. It had various one-shot comics that introduced new characters who use names familiar to us through DC Comics mainline, but adding a new creative spin on them. As a result, its characters were super different from the versions that we are used to. Green Lantern herself has claimed to have many different names, including Lois Lane and Zatanna, but her true identity still remains a mystery to us. Her power actually seems to come from a more traditional Chinese lantern as well, so she's quite a different character and quite a different take, which I guess is why I like her so much. Number 3. Alan Scott. Now for this one, we're not talking about the Prime Earth Alan Scott. In fact, you may have noticed I'm actively trying to avoid mentioning any Prime Earth lanterns on this list that, just are not Hal Jordan. We are talking instead about Alan Scott of Earth 2. This version of Alan Scott gained his powers after he almost died as the result of a train crash. Here, Alan Scott specifically uses his Green Lantern powers to fight against the Grey, which is also interesting because his former love, Sam Zhao, actually goes on to become an avatar of the White. Yes, in this reality, Alan Scott is still gay. For any who are wondering, in fact, his history here differs somewhat, as he is actually openly gay in this reality, which is a little different. In fact, Alan was about to propose to Sam when the train they were on crashed, ultimately leading to Alan getting his powers after being left as the only survivor. That's right, everyone else was gone, is just Alan left. He was approached by the Green Flame, which told him he was chosen to become the protector of Earth as Earth's Green Lantern. Number 2. Emerald Knight. This alternate version of John Stewart hails from Earth number 3, the home of the crime syndicate. This version of John, however, unlike many others from this universe, doesn't seem to be exactly a supervillain. Although he definitely does kill people and has made some questionable choices for sure, but there's definitely people in this reality that are more villainy than him. Initially, this version of John Stewart was a father and policeman who made a deal with a crime lord in order to get his daughter an emergency operation on her leg that she desperately needed. Although he paid the crime lord back right away, as he obviously did not want to be in debt to him, one night the crime lord's son ran into John and basically mocked him for having ever even made a deal with his father. Furious, John beat the son of the crime boss out back in an alleyway. When his daughter begged him to stop, a ring appeared, presenting itself to him. Because the son was basically at this point threatening to tell his father and promised that John and his daughter would pay with their lives for their actions here, John chose to accept the ring and became an Emerald Knight, one of the overlords of Oa's soldier. A major difference between the Emerald Knights and the Green Lanterns of Prime Earth is that they can severely punish those who are deemed their enemy, often killing them. Number 1. DCAU John Stewart. While we know of John Stewart from the Prime Earth reality, the main continuity currently of the comics, he also has an alternate that hails from the DC animated universe. The animated universe isn't just pulled from one show, but is actually made up of a collection of shows, films, and comics, all exploring the same versions of these characters. It's not even really just its own universe, to be honest. At this point, it's also kind of like its own multiverse, possessing at least 9 of its own different alternate Earths. Here, John Stewart has a similar origin to his comic book counterpart, serving in the military before later being selected to be a member of the Green Lantern Corps. Part of the reason he actually believes he was selected is because of his time spent reading superhero comics as a kid, which he thinks actually helped him to aspire to become a hero, developing heroic traits and characteristics, and hence therefore being selected to become a Green Lantern. Number 10. Symbiote Beast. In the world of the evil Codex's home reality, Earth 1051, 1, Beast himself seems to become one with a symbiote. If you aren't familiar with Codex of Earth 1051, let me update you on that. He's basically the evil version of Dylan Brock, who, in that reality, grew up with his mother alive as opposed to his father. He ends up ruling the world as the villain Codex after falling prey to Null's dark whisperings, becoming manipulated by him until his 616 counterpart and the 616 Eddie Brock are able to set him free. Beast, as a member of the X-Men, seems to have acquired his own symbiote and was one of the few heroes who was apparently left to stand up against Codex. But ultimately, he and of course the mutant team, the X-Men, failed. We only see this version of Beast in one issue, or at least that's all we've seen of him so far, but I really love this symbiote design for him. I think it looks super cool, hence why I wanted to start off this list with Symbiote Beast. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that thumbs up? It really does help us out, and it feeds the algorithm. Feed the algorithm! Sometimes we must. Number 9, Earth A. Everyone gets sued, left, right, and center when it comes to Earth A. Oh boy. For those who are not familiar with this reality and its inhabitants, it was a world where most people did not actually have superpowers. It is also known by its designated number of Earth 721. Here, a scientist created a device that would allow the people of the Earth A reality to travel to Earth 616, so they might go on vacation living the life of their superhero counterparts on this Earth. If you've heard about Jennifer Walters aka She-Hulk getting romantic with Juggernaut aka Kane Marco, this was actually later revealed to have not actually been Jen, but instead her impersonator from Earth A. That's how we made sense of that weird thing that happened, because it was a weird thing. As a result of many heroes being impersonated by their Earth A counterparts, there were a lot of lawsuits as a result of that revelation. Beast of Earth 616 was one of the many who attempted to sue his Earth A counterpart, who did in fact, of course, impersonate him. Beast was hoping to sue the Henry McCoy of Earth 712 for any and all scientific discoveries he'd made while disguised as his 616 counterpart.
Number 8. Exiles. One of the most fun things about Tony is that, well, all you need is one story to take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Tony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. When you do that, what you get is terrifying. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees but has the sense to not let them know it and then be begged to take charge. And that's exactly what happened with the Tony Stark of Earth 42777. This incredibly evil Iron Man concocted a massive plan. Tony acquired every world conglomerate, he organized a mutant war against humanity, and then defeated their leader, Magneto, who he secretly supported, in order to be held up as a savior. He created a worldwide famine the likes of which has never been seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it. And all of that together got him elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to cause biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control to Tony. Central America and our very own Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into Tony's control as well. Tony then made a deal with Dr. Doom, who then attacked the Capitol and took out all the other Democratic leaders in America. Then, Tony turned on him too, receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured as he took the life of the Latvian ruler. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This Tony appearing in Exiles issue number 23 is one of the coolest ones out there, but also one of the scariest. Number 7. Ultimate Iron Man. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be pretty much nigh unkillable. This was proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought Tony's demise, but in actuality he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual Iron Man abilities and capabilities. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suit, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. He eventually had his mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem to allow him to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, pretty ultimate. Number 6. Iron Goblin. The Spider Island story, taking place on the alternate Earth of Earth 1991, basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques to cure heroes of the spider monster virus. This includes injecting the Hulk with the Lizard Serum, using the God Stone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man though, he was sprayed with Norman Osborn's Goblin formula. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. But of course, this was combined with all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the Goblin Serum famously also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane though, and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance. It was actually very awesome. Number 5. Iron Hammer. In the 2018 Infinity Wars story, a warped together world was created by Gamora using the power of the Infinity Stones and Gauntlet. Essentially, Gamora folded the universe, and that molded souls with one another, creating amalgamated heroes. And for this spot, we're talking about the amalgamation of Iron Man and the God of Thunder, Thor. Stark, Odin's son, is an awesome version of Iron Man and Thor that enjoys virtual immortality thanks to his Asgardian physiology, along with superhuman strength and endurance. His hammer, Mjolnir Iron, which I know is a stupid name, has all the same powers as the regular Mjolnir, but it also grants Stark his armor, which is now a mystical suit of Asgardian armor. Since both Thor and Tony kind of have daddy issues, this version of the mix has their father, Howard Odin, playing a huge part in the story too. It's pretty damn awesome and you should check it out. Number 4. Iron Maniac. Coming at us from the alternate Earth 5012, Iron Maniac shows readers what a totally evil version of Tony Stark would look like, other than the Exiles one and any other evil version, I guess. The Tony Stark from this war-torn version of the Marvel Universe has done some truly horrible things following the loss of so many of his fellow heroes at the hands of the villain Titanus. Using a really cool armor that also somewhat resembles Doctor Doom's armor, the Iron Maniac went against the Fantastic Four and even took the life of Johnny Blaze in his native universe. His advanced armor repels magical attacks as well as generates a neural dampening field that mitigates telepathic and telekinetic attacks to some degree, which really helped him out to be absolutely terrible. Reed Richards of Earth 5012 eventually found a way to send this Tony Stark to the 616 universe, where he faced the 616 Fantastic Four and eventually the New Avengers, showing just how powerful this evil Iron Man actually is and making us thank our stars that normal Tony Stark is a good guy. Number 3. Steel Corpse. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent all the good that mutants can do, and as a result of that, the mutant population had become enemy number 1 to the human race. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led directly to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes organized by General Frank Castle and led by a much more unlikable Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. One member of this team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corpse. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has been slowly digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they aren't going to attack the mutants who are just trying to survive, so the government takes control of Steel Corpse and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never leave and apparently cannot control. Number 2. Iron Lantern. The Amalgam Universe combined the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel Comics, during a time of utmost peace and prosperity. Just kidding, this was in the 90s. This crazy event pitted popular characters from both sides against each other and even fused some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, or Hal for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own and crashed at the site of another crashed alien spaceship. The crash of Hal Stark's craft left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which would have ended his life if he hadn't met the dying alien Roman Sur, and using the suspiciously lantern-shaped alien battery, built a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive, but due to the advanced alien tech, it gave him the ability to create green, solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel. It granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever-classic superhuman strength and durability. Stark became one of the most overpowered heroes around, and an Iron Man Green Lantern combo was not something that I knew that I needed, but I'm glad I have it. And finally, in at number 1, it's Robert Downey Jr. Nothing can really stand up to the closest thing we got to a real Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark was the whole groundwork MCU, and his character endured for years, with aspects of his characterization even influencing comic Tony Stark to a degree. Taking aspects of the original character and adding some realism and a really likable performance made for a version of Iron Man that boosted up not only the comic book character's popularity, but through the MCU, it boosted up the popularity of comic books in general, and we will always celebrate that. Being in a world that is a bit more grounded and relatable to our own, this Iron Man doesn't have as complex of a story, nor is he more powerful, but he is more than impressive enough without that. Not to mention, he was the one to actually defeat Thanos in the end. His send-off from the MCU affected people who don't even read comic books, and I think that says a lot. And I can't read Iron Man in comics anymore without hearing Robert Downey Jr.'s voice. He is Iron Man.
Number 10. Ben Grimm. There are so many excellent alternate versions of Thor to highlight from the Thor Corps, but I decided to go with the version I don't believe I have ever talked about on this channel. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I have. We're talking about Benjamin Grimm, who's not just a member of the Thor Corps, Emperor God Doom's enforcers of justice and peace on Battleworld, but is also a member of the Fantastic Thors. That's right, this alternate version of the Fantastic Four all became Thors, although it's never established as to how this happened for them. I just think the idea of Ben Grimm becoming Thor is pretty cool. I mean, Ben is already a super strong character, so imagine combining him with the sheer godly power as well of Thor. The Thor Corps in general are also just insane. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider clicking that subscribe button? It's good for us, it's good for you, it's good for everyone. Number 9. Adam Aziz. Like Jane Foster, Adam Aziz became Thor briefly when the hammer presented itself to him. However, he didn't last nearly as long as other mortals have in the role. Definitely not as long as Jane Foster. This is because the hammer presented itself to him when it was broken during Donny Cates' recent Thor run. It wasn't that Adam was worthy, it was that the hammer needed to be fixed. He asked Thor before returning Mjolnir to him if he could use it to fly once high up in the sky like he and the other heroes so often do. Thor gave him permission, and afterwards he returned the hammer, giving Thor some advice on how he might fix it, based on Adam's own experience. The good ol' IT crowd fix. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Number 8. Nocturne. Nocturne isn't really an alternate version of Nightcrawler. She's actually the daughter of an alternate reality version of Nightcrawler, but honestly, she outshines her daddy, so we're talking about her instead. Nocturne, who eventually ended up in Earth 616, came from the alternate reality of Earth 2182, and is the daughter of both Nightcrawler and, surprisingly enough, the Scarlet Witch. She was raised under the watchful eye of her father, who she lived with at Charles Xavier's school. Her mother stayed as an Avenger but remained romantically involved with Nightcrawler, but Nocturne quickly moved up the ranks to become an X-Man when she was old enough, and eventually was able to fight at the side of her father on a team of X-Men led by Wolverine, which included Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, Kitty Pryde, Phoenix Force, and Armageddon. After moving to Earth 616, she sees the main Nightcrawler as a father figure, and they have become pretty close friends. Now, just like him, Nocturne has blue fur, 3 fingers on each hand, 2 toes per foot, and a prehensile tail, although her tail is retractable, which is kinda weird. Like her father, she's extremely athletic and is a skilled fighter. She's able to cling to any surface by her hands and feet, but she can't teleport like her poppy. Instead, Nocturne has the ability to possess someone for up to 12 hours, and then gain access to that person's abilities and memories. She also has superhuman agility, low-level telepathy, and can release concussive bolts of energy called Hex Bolts, kinda like her mom. Number 7. Citizen V. In the Darkhold Blade story, a dark magic wave called the V-Wave was unleashed by Deacon Frost when he offered himself as host to the ancient blood demon La Magra. The V-Wave turned billions of humans into vampires, but it also affected superhumans, randomly converting them into either humans or vampires. On Krakoa, almost every mutant that was turned into a human was completely decimated by the ones that were turned into vampires, with the exception of just Nightcrawler, who managed to teleport away before he was turned into a human. Kurt eventually made his way back to the United States of America and formed the last Avengers with the Prowler and Silver Sable, taking up the mantle of Citizen V. In a world dominated by vampires, Citizen V and his Avengers tried to locate a cure for vampirism, which unfortunately for Citizen V led to his untimely demise at the hands of the Daywalker Blade. But up until then, he was really freaking cool. Number 6, X2. If you ever watched the second ever live action X-Men movie, fittingly titled X2, then you probably remember the absolutely awesome opening scene, which was basically just a showcase of Nightcrawler and his powers. Played magnificently by Alan Cumming, this Nightcrawler is brainwashed into attempting an attack on the President of the United States, and the scene basically sees him take on the entire Secret Service, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, I actually got some right here. Outside of that scene though, Nightcrawler shares much of the same history with the comic book counterpart. One major difference between the comic book Nightcrawler and his film counterpart is that he wears ordinary civilian clothing as opposed to an X-Men uniform, because he's not actually a member of the X-Men in the film, just an ally of the team. Some other differences would be that he has blue flesh instead of blue fur, his skin is also decorated by angelic symbols to reflect his religious nature, and I guess his puff of smoke is more blue than purple, but who cares? That opening scene sold me immediately on the character of Nightcrawler, and for that, I thank it. Number 5, Age of Apocalypse. In the Age of Apocalypse, Nightcrawler is very similar to his Earth 616 counterpart, except he's an incredibly capable warrior brandishing dual blades at all times, and he isn't really as lovable as he would be normally. This Nightcrawler hates the church, having had a traumatic experience when he was much younger, which is a far cry from the original. Nightcrawler in this universe is also close to his mother, Mystique, which is why he gladly takes on the Darkholme last name. This Nightcrawler believes his biological father is actually Sabretooth, since Mystique stated that she had gone to the trouble of finding a father with fur when Nightcrawler complains that he was cold. What's really interesting though is that this version of Nightcrawler actually chooses to remain in the 616 reality and joins up with X-Force. But being on Earth 616, he does get mistaken for the original Nightcrawler, which he does not appreciate. Like, at one point he pushed Kitty Pryde for mistaking him for a resurrected Nightcrawler. While working with X-Force, he has successfully took out his reality's Blob by teleporting a shark into his stomach, which devoured Blob from the inside out, and he also took out Iceman from the Age of Apocalypse reality, where the weakened Iceman begged for forgiveness before being thrown into an incinerator, which is a pretty fast way to go, I guess. He has also made several unsuccessful attempts on Dark Beast's life, but that never really went anywhere. In March 2013's Extermination crossover, this focused on Nightcrawler's attempt to get back to his home universe, but unfortunately, during the event, the Age of Apocalypse reality was destroyed alongside this version of Nightcrawler. Number 4, Earth X. Okay, so this one to me is really strange. In the Earth X reality, where the entire population was given superpowers thanks to the release of Terrigen Mists, Nightcrawler was a part of Excalibur, like he is in the normal universe. During a fight with Grey Gargoyle, he was forced to teleport away to a random village, but strangely found himself turned back into just a regular old dude with no powers, and for that, he was attacked by the villagers who are now mutated. Eventually, he was visited by the demon Mephisto in disguise. Mephisto convinced Kurt that everyone hated him for being a freak and convinced Nightcrawler to want revenge. Under that direction, Mephisto brought Nightcrawler to Limbo, transformed him to appear as Belasco, and clouded his memory to lead him to believe that he really was the Belasco in Dante's Inferno. He was then put in suspended animation and frozen in ice. Later on, in a fight with Captain America and Captain Marvel, Mephisto ended up causing Captain America to accidentally send the frozen Belasco Nightcrawler into the past, where he essentially did the same things that Belasco is known for in the regular continuity. Earth X is amazing, but I'd be kinda lying if I said it wasn't incredibly confusing at times and deep, and does a lot of weird things just like this. Belasco Nightcrawler eventually became a good guy and one of the key figures in deciding life or death on Earth 9997. Number 3, Thorcore. Okay, so this version of a Nightcrawler isn't really around for any significant amount of time, but the idea of him is just so cool to me, and I kinda want more of it. During 2015, 2015 Secret War event, when Dr. Doom created Battleworld, he pulled together an entire army of alternate reality versions of Thor to act as his own personal police force. This Thor Corps was incredibly powerful and had some of the coolest spliced together versions of Thor out there, and one of them just happened to be Nightcrawler, wielding the ancient Asgardian Mjolnir. Kurt Wagner was one of the Thor Corps members dispatched to Arcadia after Baroness She-Hulk resisted arrest and fled in A-Force number 3 in 2015, and that's all the information I really have about him. Number 2. Ultimate. In the Ultimate universe of Earth 1610, Nightcrawler was rescued by the X-Men from the Weapon X program. While accepted as a member of the X-Men for a time, he's kind of insane, and he has a fixation on Dazzler. Like, I'm talking this guy stole Dazzler and kept her in a cave where the other members of the team could not find her while she was being healed. Nightcrawler eventually left the X-Mansion looking for a place where he could fit in, and thinking he may have found it with the Morlocks. Now, funnily enough though, Kurt and the mutant Toad were captured by the Morlocks and the X-Men came to rescue them. But Nightcrawler refused to leave and became the leader of the Morlocks instead. But that didn't even last, as Nightcrawler eventually rejoined the X-Men. After taking the power-enhancing Banshee substance, Kurt got some upgrades. Now, wielding energy javelins, his appearance also drastically changed, with his hands becoming almost clawed and his tail being pointed at the end. He also makes gold yellow smoke instead of the classic purple smoke when he's teleporting. I don't know why, that's just what they did. Unfortunately, Kurt Wagner and Dazzler, who for some reason became his girlfriend, both passed away during Magneto's ultimatum wave. Ah, sad. Number 1. Days of Future Past. With the power of teleportation, Nightcrawler is one slippery guy. Very hard to bring down, let's say. In the Days of Future Past, it's no different. At first, Nightcrawler was seemingly taken out at the Westchester Mansion by the US Army, along with his wife Amanda Sefton, while accompanying Ilyana Rasputina to a bus stop. Turns out, nope, he somehow survived the Mansion Massacre. Now, fleeing to Europe and establishing himself in United Germany, Kurt was both part of the priesthood and the European Mutant Collective, and he now went by the name Father Wagner. In this position, he was a constant irritation to the hierarchy, and for that was tracked and attacked by the Hound, Rachel Summers. Nightcrawler, or Father Wagner I should say, managed to buy Pietro enough time to get the orphan mutants he was protecting to safety before being apparently taken out by Ahab. But, what do you know, Kurt survived one more time and made his way back to the X-Men, where he became romantically involved with Bess. Together they were part of the mission that retrieved Rachel Summers and freed her from Ahab's control. So, not bad. Not bad at all. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the Legion of Night. The Legion of Night comes from a world where Mr. Sinister corrupted the genomes of those who underwent the mutant resurrection protocols on Krakoa. Because of this, Sinister's control over humanity and mutantdom became supreme. One of his experiments was combining the genetics of different mutants to create powerful chimeras to serve him, and it made for some crazy awesome comic book moments. A particularly special project was turning the genes of Nightcrawler into a band of teleporting assassins. However, due to a spell cast by Margali Zardos, Nightcrawler's genome was actually unstable, ruining any attempts of cloning him. Years later though, after Mother Righteous took out Zardos to break the spell, Mr. Sinister could finally work with Nightcrawler's genome and formed the Legion of Night. This group was comprised of beings that were spliced together versions of Nightcrawler and many other different heroes, including Colossus, Pixie, Emplate, Pyro, Sabretooth, Cyclops, and even Spider-Man. This group were incredibly capable, being able to collect magical artifacts from across the Marvel Universe, even being able to defeat All-Father Thor and take his hammer. Number 9. Wagnerine. But the Legion of Night, while having leadership in Mother Righteous, also had field leaders. One of which was the mutant Banshee possessed by the spirit of variance called Vox Ignis, and the other was Mr. Sinister's favorite Nightcrawler chimera, Wagnerine. Mixing the DNA of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Wagnerine, funnily enough, was more of a mix of Laura Kinney, X-23, and Nightcrawler, and she made for an excellent assassin and leader for Mother Righteous once she had been freed from the control of Mr. Sinister. Wagnarine ended up beating the odds and procreated with the Cyclops Nightcrawler, aka Summer Knight, to create a golden mutant teleporter who seemingly teleported to a random location immediately after her birth, causing Summer Knight to go a little crazy and lose control of himself, falling victim to the influence of Sinister once again. Eventually, it was revealed that Mother Righteous had actually taken the child, and when that was revealed to Wagnarine, she defected. Now 900 years later, she was finally able to bring down Mother Righteous and go on to try and live a happy life with her baby.
Number 8. Ben Parker. If you can believe it, in an alternate reality, there is actually a version of Benjamin Parker, Spider-Man's uncle, who became Thor. This version of Thor and Ben hails from the alternate reality of Earth 615 and makes his first and only appearance in Secret Wars 2, issue number 1. Secret Wars 2 is in TOO, by the way. Here we're introduced to Thor as a member of the Avengers, who are one of the superhero teams from a region of Battle World known as number 615. Here, everyone is actually Ben Parker, so I think you can imagine the Avengers, I mean they're all Ben. Number 7. Eric Masterson. Okay, so with Thor, there are a lot of other folks who have also had the mantle, but this isn't really the same as someone like, you know, DC's Green Lantern. For that, there are many different Green Lanterns, and then there are alternates of those characters from other realities. For Thor, you know, there's usually only one Thor at a time, which is why I'm letting myself count versions of the character like Eric Masterson who are from the main continuity. Eric for a time was Thor himself, but also existed as Thor in the Earth 616 reality. How was this possible? Well, Eric was just a mortal man, but after becoming involved in Thor's adventures, ended up bonded with the hero after he received a life-threatening injury. In order to save Eric's life, Thor pleaded with Odin to help. Odin helped by merging Thor and Eric together, with them each initially retaining their own separate personalities and forms, but simply sharing a body. Number 6. Thor Machine. Thor Machine was the editorial name given to this alternate. This version of Thor is one you might recognize as War Machine, aka Jim Rhodes, aka Rhodey, Tony Stark's good friend and ally. However, this isn't the Rhodes of Earth 616, the main continuity. This is the Rhodes of Earth 12311, home of Technopolis, and one of the alternate realities that was created when God Emperor Doom rebuilt the multiverse in his image, following the incursions destroying the multiverse we knew previous to Secret Wars, the 2015 Secret Wars, to be clear. Here, Rhodes was known as Grand Marshal Jim Rhodes, the Thor of this reality and an ally to the Baron of this domain, an alternate Tony Stark. Instead of him being an Asgardian god, this version of Thor actually gets his powers from his armor, which resembles the look of Thor's costume and armor. Number 5. Jane Foster. Jane is her own character, but was for a time also Thor. Currently in the comics, she's instead known as Valkyrie right now, but before that, she was granted the powers of Mjolnir after Thor was deemed unworthy and lost his ability to use it. The hammer called to Jane, and she answered the call, becoming Thor, known editorially as Mighty Thor. Eventually, Jane gave up the ability to become Thor in her final fight against Mangog. She sacrificed herself as transforming into Thor was actually killing her. Currently suffering from cancer, the transformation basically wiped clean any of the progress her chemotherapy treatments were making in fighting back against the disease. In the end, Jane bound Mangog in chains intended for Fenris that were attached to Mjolnir and hurled up the hammer into the sun. This destroyed the hammer and seemingly killed Jane, ending her time as the mysterious Lady Thor. Of course, Thor Odinson would not give up, and surprisingly, with Odin's help, was able to revive her, with her passing the mantle of Thor back to Odinson. Number 4. MCU. I mean, can I really do a list like this without talking about Chris Hemsworth's take on the character? I do not think that I can. While Thor Love and Thunder was not exactly the masterpiece we were all hoping it to be for the Thor and Marvel superhero franchise, you can't say that the character development we've seen for Thor has been amazing. By far, Thor has seen some of the most character development among the versions of the heroes we've come to know in the MCU. I would say Thor and Scarlet Witch oddly have seen some of the greatest developments throughout the more than decade we've been watching superhero films and television. Thor went from a reckless god who didn't really feel he belonged on Earth, nor really wanted to be there, to one of Midgard's greatest heroes, to an orphaned and relatively directionless passionless Asgardian to the hero of his people to someone who himself went toe-to-toe with Gore in an attempt to protect not just his people, but all the gods of the universe. That's quite the journey, honestly. Also, he got a haircut, which for Thor, honestly, that's a pretty big deal. Number 3. Loki. A version of Loki who we initially knew as Kid Loki, but who has since become the main Loki in the comics, no longer a kid version of himself currently, was actually once Thor. He took up the mantle during the Marvel Axis event. Now, if you don't know of Axis, it was basically an event where the alignments of many major heroes and villains in the Marvel universe were flipped. For Thor, this meant he became a villain. For Loki, however, this meant he was free of the guilt of his past misdeeds and basically became a straight up hero. It also meant he was deemed worthy to wield Mjolnir, which he did, himself becoming the hero Thor and fighting against his now evil brother Odinson. However, after the alignments of everyone were once more reversed, returning everyone, or almost everyone anyways, back to their old alignments, the guilt crept back in, making Loki feel unworthy and ending his brief time as the hero Thor. Number 2. Ultimate Thor. Ultimate Thor initially seemed to not be Thor at all, but just a human man named Thorleif Gorman, who was deemed delusional. However, in truth, he was actually Thor, and the delusions he would later suffer would actually reveal themselves to in fact be true memories. Claiming to be the Norse god of thunder at first led to him being institutionalized, but later these delusions were in fact confirmed to be his true memories by Dr. Donald Blake, whom Thor actually recognized as the reincarnation of his half-brother Balder. Thor was simply remembering after being exiled for years to Midgard and made to forget. Initially, it was the suit that Thor wore, which was given to him by the Dome, that gave him his powers. But as his memories came back, the power within him was unlocked and returned to him ultimately by Odin so that he might use it to defeat Loki. And he reclaimed his actual powers, not needing the suit to necessarily channel them. Though one of the interesting things is that it's not really fully established in the Ultimate Comics to what extent, even after having his powers returned to him, that he relies on the suit, and to what extent the powers that he displays are actually just innate from within himself. So it's kind of like a combo deal. It's like he has powers, but he's also using the suit. Number 1. Beta Ray Bill. I love when I get to put Bill at number 1. You know, I just think he deserves it. Pretty crazy to think, but Beta Ray Bill was also once technically a Thor alternate. And the origin of him being Thor actually kind of goes all the way back pretty much to his own origin story in the comics. When passing near Earth with his people, the Corbinites, he was intercepted by S.H.I.E.L.D., who sent Thor to investigate. His ship, the Scuttlebutt, classified Thor as a threat, and so Beta Ray Bill went out to fight Thor. Surprisingly, Bill pretty easily won and even was able to claim Mjolnir, becoming himself Thor. Bill claimed he should get to keep the hammer as he won it fair and square in their fight. Odin ended up getting them to battle again to determine who should get to actually keep the hammer. And once more, actually, Bill won that fight. However, ultimately it was decided that Thor would get Mjolnir back and a new hammer instead, known as Stormbreaker, was made for Bill. That's about it for this one, my friends. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.